Good evening, and thanks for joining us on tonight's Paranormal Pit Stop, which just so happens to land us off South Roosevelt Boulevard in Key West, Florida, at a popular historic landmark turned museum. Recognized as the best preserved example of Martello-style military architecture in the country, and rumored to house a number of resident spirits tied to its fascinating past, are you prepared to brave the ghosts of the Fort East Martello Museum? Historically, following Abraham Lincoln's election on November 6th of 1860, Florida would secede from the Union on January 10th of the following year, and on April 12th of 1861, the American Civil War would erupt. Despite Key West's location in reference to the southernmost U.S., its locals didn't share in the South's feelings of rebellion and chose to avoid the conflict until military presence sparked tension amongst freed African Americans, the pro-Confederate populace, the U.S. Army, and enslaved individuals, resulting in construction of the fort in 1862, alongside a twin structure called West Martello. During the initial year of its construction, the structure's workforce was hit by waves of yellow fever, slowing progress immensely. However, within a year, the citadel at West Martello was completed, while East Martello's masonry and concrete gun platforms were set. Progress was again slowed through June of 1864, as yellow fever epidemics plagued laborers once more, and though the sickness reaped heavy casualties, construction efforts were pushed through, resulting in the near completion of both forts. The Civil War would officially be ended on May 8th of 1865, with Florida formalizing their surrender later on April 26th. Progress was further delayed by a series of hardships through 1865, one of the most devastating of which was a massive hurricane that hit in October that caused heavy damages to both sites. Cleanup projects were launched, and work on the forts would continue for a time, but eventually, damages coupled with a lack of need would result in construction being halted in 1866, with the towers left in unfinished states. In 1950, a slew of restoration efforts headed by the Key West Art and Historical Society were launched on the site, and later the same year, it would open to the public as the first museum in the Keys. In 1972, the property would be recognized on the National Register of Historic Places. Over the years, it would host a number of renovations and restorations, and in 2018, it would undergo brickwork and road and parking repairs, while welcoming drainage upgrades and new roofing. Now recognized as the Fort East Martello Museum, the Martello Gallery Key West Art and Historical Museum, or more simply, the East Martello Tower, the site remains open to this day and is operated by the Key West Art and Historical Society, who use it to feature a number of local history and art exhibits, including those pertaining to early settlement, sponging and fishing, writers, military affairs, Cuban culture, and various notable characters, alongside tours of both the standard and nighttime paranormal varieties. Chillingly, Fort East Martello is rumored to play home to at least 42 separate entities, some of which are suspected to be tied to the Civil War, others to the area's history and to various epidemics, and others still to the museum artifacts. And across its bounds, both staff and visitors have reported objects that move on their own, orbs and strange mists in the backgrounds of photography, the constant feeling of being watched, instances of alarms sounding without cause, and encounters with ominous shadowy figures and the full-bodied apparitions of soldiers, sailors, and of individuals in clothing from different eras. One exhibit and legend tells of Dr. Karl von Kossel, a man of medicine who fell in love with one of his patients, Elena, who died only months after their meeting, leaving him heartbroken. It's said the good doctor visited her grave night after night on end, until eventually he took her body home, in hopes of bringing it back to life. Von Kossel resided with Elena's corpse for 7 years, until his closeted skeletons, figuratively and literally speaking, were discovered, and he fled the area to avoid notoriety. The spirits of both the doctor and of Elena have been encountered, with the former always seemingly hurrying about, and the latter bearing a look of confusion, possibly over her desecrated remains. Lastly, the Fort East Martello Museum is most famous in the realms of the supernatural for its holding of the infamous Robert the Doll, a sinister stuffy rumored to be severely haunted or possessed. Historically, this doll originally belonged to artist Robert Eugene Otto, who was described as eccentric and who was tied to a prominent Key West family. It was made by the Steiff Company of Germany, was purchased by Robert's grandfather while on a trip to the region in 1904, and was gifted to him on his birthday. Some additional Personal legends claim that the doll was actually given to Robert by a servant, and others that it had a voodoo curse placed upon it. Additionally, the doll's sailor uniform is suspected to be an outfit donned by young Robert himself as a child. When Robert grew and left to study art in New York and Paris, the doll would remain behind, stored in his family home. He would marry one Annette Parker in 1930, the couple would return to the family home, and after a life together, Otto would pass on in 1974, with his wife following him in death just 2 years later, after which their estate containing the doll was purchased by Myrtle Reuter. Reuter would maintain ownership for 20 years before the home was sold to its current owner, who, in 1994, donated the doll to the museum. As legend has it, Robert the doll is endowed with a paranormal presence which allows him to move, change facial expressions, and make giggling sounds, abilities which he purportedly used to terrorize our human Robert, and through his childhood, it's documented his parents actually heard the two conversing on several occasions. More recently, in local folklore, Robert the doll is rumored to be capable of incomprehensible evil, cursing those who disrespect him, and has purportedly been responsible for car accidents, broken bones, job loss, financial ruin, and divorces, among other things. Many visiting the museum are plagued by camera issues while attempting to take Robert's photo before asking permission, and disturbingly, staff has reported watching his small figure move about within his glass case, pressing his hands to the sides and smiling, while emitting his demonic giggle. Even more chilling, the Fort East Martello Museum has commented on its receiving of at least a letter a day from past visitors, all apologizing to Robert and begging that his curse be lifted from their lives. Thanks for tuning in for this Paranormal Pit Stop. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.